Hello and welcome to Turning Anxiety into Abundance, How to Manifest in Uncertain Times. So, when was the last time it happened to you that you get into bed, you get all snugly, you close your eyes, and then all of a sudden your brain turns on at full speed? Suddenly you're thinking about what happened on the news, how it might impact your family, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do to get your next client? And then the next thing you know, it's been hours that you've been laying in your bed and your brain is just spinning into anxiety and you cannot sleep. Today, we're going to talk about how common it is to be feeling anxiety right now and what we can do to shift our anxiety into abundance. Talking really about the components that the nervous system and the emotions play in manifestation, giving you plenty of tools to be able to calm your nervous system and calm your emotions. But before we get started into that, I'd love to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Kitty Coy. I am the Manifestation Mentor. I love supporting ambitious women to create a life of abundance, an abundance of wealth, an abundance of health, and an abundance of time. Too often we think that we can have two or one of the three. I can have abundant time or I can have lots of money, but I can't have both. And I teach women how to live in the land of and, where they can have two seemingly contradictory things at the same time. I support them to get there using quantum physics and neuroscience because I have a master's degree in neuroscience. My greatest superpower is taking things that are very complicated and kind of obtuse and intangible and distilling them down into easy to understand things with structured, actionable steps. Quantum physics, manifestation, neuroscience, human design. I've taken all of these things and made them easy and actionable for you to understand. So I'm going to apply these superpowers today when I provide this information. And my mission is to live in a world where all women feel financially independent. When they have an aligned yes for something they choose to do, they never have to ask permission. Whether that permission is to a partner or a pocketbook, I want women to feel financially independent so that when they want to do something, they just do it. They don't have to ask their bank account for permission. All right, so we'll jump into how to turn anxiety into abundance. We are certainly living in unprecedented times right now. There is so much anxiety and uncertainty in every area of our life. The economy is doing weird stuff, the government is doing strange things. And truly, we have never been in a situation as a country, we've never been in the situation exactly like we find ourselves right now. And anything that is new is coded as and perceived by the nervous system as unsafe. And so we are manifesting all of the time. Truly, we're manifesting each and every day multiple times. But when we're in this place of anxiety and uncertainty, we start manifesting from our worst fears because you manifest truly from your emotional energy. So instead of manifesting your wildest dreams, you start manifesting your worst nightmares. So, in what makes this even worse is the news media outlets are specifically spoon feeding us fearful narratives. Truly, we are much stronger when we are bound together in community, all of us working together, than any one of us that is working independently. And so news media has done a lot of things to make us fearful of our neighbor, fearful of all these different things, fearful of people of different races, all of these different situations. We are fed sometimes only negative information and sometimes misinformation that truly racks our nervous system and makes us afraid because then we're so busy spinning, being suspicious about our neighbor or being just trying to be on the hamster wheel every day just to figure out how we're going to pay the bills, that we don't have the time to really look at what the government is doing kind of behind the scenes. And so our brains and nervous systems are already hardwired to focus on survival. So we actually are much more queued up to notice and react to fear than and negative things than we are to the positive. And that's truly based on survival. So let me explain how that works in your brain. Our lives are basically most of the time in a good place, 80% positive and about 20% negative. However, because our caveman brains are hardwired to focus on the fear, our brain actually amplifies the negative by 3 times. It does this because back in caveman times, if we were hanging out with our tribe and a snake slithered in, bit someone, and they died, our lives and the lives of our family, our survival of our tribe, depends on us remembering exactly what that snake looked like. So, in order to keep ourselves alive, our brains have been hardwired to look at these negative things and really amplify the intensity of them so we can survive. So when your life is 80% positive and 20% negative, you feel like it's 60% negative because your brain just turns the volume up on the negative thoughts and the fear. And this is when your life is in a good place, this 80-20 split. What if your life is in 60-40, where it's 60% positive and 40% negative? Well, suddenly that 40% actually feels like 120%, and we get overwhelmed with these negative emotions, even though it's only about half or a little bit less of our experience. And it's truly because our brain just turns up the volume on these negative thoughts to keep us alive. And our brain filters information to prove your beliefs and unfortunately your fears right. Let's talk about how that works. So you can only see 0.000003% of all information that exists outside of you right now, which means 99.999997% of all information is being blocked. And by information, what we're talking about is all of your skin cells have proprioceptors that can sense the temperature. They can feel the texture of my clothes rubbing on them. I am aware my eyes are giving my brain information about the colors that I see. My ears are giving my brain information about what I hear, smells, tastes. So all of our senses and all of our extrasensory perception is giving information to our brain. And our brain would simply be overwhelmed with data processing if it had to process that much information. There was a study in the 1950s that showed that we have, including all of this sensory perception and extrasensory perception, like our intuition or vibes that we can feel, there is 5 billion bits of information coming to our brain every single second. So that is why most information is blocked, because your brain in this study they showed can only process 126 bits of information per second, which means this is where the 99.999997% of information is getting blocked. And it's the reason why babies don't like shoes is because their brain's filter isn't set up and working yet. So they're anytime you put on something like a sock or a shoe, their brain is getting flooded with new information from all of their skin receptors, sending them information about the pressure and the texture of these socks and shoes on their feet. It's also the reason why when you put on a new watch, you notice it because your brain senses it as new information. But then by the end of the day, or maybe within 2 days, you no longer sense the watch, because your brain has blocked out that information. It's determined to be the same. And so that is what it filters out. And then you get to the point where literally you start to feel naked when the watch is missing, because your brain is set the filter to filter out the information of the watch or the socks and shoes if you're a baby, and it's only letting through new and novel things. So, if in the 1950s, when television wasn't really a thing, it was just a couple hours of programming in the evening in black and white on one channel, and it was done by like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. and there was no smartphones, and marketing and advertising was barely a thing in the 1950s, the way we perceive it right now. There was no internet or any of that. So, how can you even imagine how many billion bits of information is actually coming to our brain in any given moment? Now, 75 years later, where we have smartphones and we have computers that we carry around in our pocket that are smarter and more powerful than what they had to land the moon lander in the 1950s. And so we have, every time you look at an article, it is just inundated with ads along the sides, and your brain is just crammed information at all times. I know that they're actually working on redoing this study. I know that the information we probably receive 50 billion bits of information per second now. And I bet that this number 126 has actually gone up, but I bet it is proportional. So I bet it's only gone up to, like, 1,260 bits. Because when we add a zero on 50 billion and up to 1,200 bits. And so, just a random side note, but this is why eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. Because two people can be in the same place at the same time seeing the same information, but a different 126 bits got filtered through. And so that's why in eyewitness testimony, people will say, oh, the SUV was red, and the person next to them will say, no, the SUV was black. So anyways, it's because a different amount of 126 bits was filtered between them. And so you might be asking yourself right now, what is the information makes it that does make it through your brain's filter? So what does go through your brain's filter is whatever you're focused on, whatever you're thinking about, whatever your attention is on, evidence that proves your beliefs and feelings right, because the subconscious has two jobs, which is to keep you alive. One, survival. We talked about it does that by amplifying the volume on your fear signals. And two, the subconscious proves you right. And by you, I mean your beliefs and your feelings, which can be different than your thoughts and desires. So, whatever you consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously want to be true is what makes it through your brain's filter. So, if there's a part of you that wants more abundance, but you're afraid that you don't know where to pay your rent, you're very conditioned in the belief that you live paycheck to paycheck. Unconsciously, it's safer for your brain to assume that it's a fearful scarcity paycheck to paycheck situation. That's what you unconsciously want to be true because it's familiar. And so, what it is that we consciously or unconsciously desire really affects how our brain's filter shows up. Thankfully, you can actually change your brain's filter. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so, whatever you focus on, whatever you unconsciously want to be true, is what you see all around you. So, the problem is we don't actually know what we want to be true. And we think we know what we want, but honestly, most of what we want is either an illusion or trying to move away from something that we don't want. So it's a reaction. Let me explain what I mean by that. So some examples are we want abundance because we don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, so we're pushing away from something. And we have this illusion that we'll feel more safe or secure when we have more money. That is an example of not knowing what you want. And you want love because you don't want to be lonely, and you'll feel more stable when you have a partner. You want peace or ease because you don't want to feel anxiety, and you'll feel more safe when things are less crazy in your life. So these are all examples of how we block ourselves in manifesting, because what we think we want is an illusion and a reaction to something else. It's not a real desire. So how do you reprogram your brain's filter? Is to figure out what you really want. Your real desire is something you want because you want it. No reason other than that. No hidden agenda. It's not going to help you feel safe, stable, secure. In fact, there are 7 things that you can never manifest: safety, stability, security, freedom, independence, control, and comfort. You can never manifest those things. And oftentimes, what we think we want is trying to manifest those things that we can't manifest. And we can't manifest them because you cannot manifest abundance from scarcity. And if you want freedom, it's because you feel not free or unfree right now. So it's you're coming from a place of scarcity trying to manifest abundance. So step one is honestly sometimes the hardest part, and that's why I love my job. I get to support people using neuroscience. I have a create your vision workshop that is a neuroscience process we do to get past your conscious mind, past your subconscious, and help you tap into your heart's deepest desire, which is what you really and truly want, not what you think you should, not what you think you want, and not what somebody told you you should want. So step one can be the most challenging, is figure out what you really want in life. And then program your brain to find it. If what you want is abundance, you can program your brain to find it by really intentionally focusing and noticing all of the abundance that comes to you every single day. And in doing that, you are gathering evidence that it's happening already. So things like finding a penny on the sidewalk, finding a dollar in an old coat pocket, or maybe an uncashed check in a purse you haven't used for a couple weeks. This is evidence that abundance is flowing to you. But it's not just money, it's also a way that you can track abundance is gifts. You go to a coffee connect and someone treats you to a coffee. Well, that's proof that you're receiving abundance. Or you go to a grocery store and the exact thing you wanted is on discount. That is proof that you have abundance because it's money you didn't have to spend and you got what you really wanted, the spaghetti sauce or whatever it is, and you paid less. So that is proof that abundance is flowing to you in a creative way. So to reprogram your brain, you need to notice where whatever you want is already happening. And so just notice the synchronicities as proof. Anytime you say, "Oh, I really want XYZ," and it appears, that is proof that you are manifesting. Gather that evidence. And we mentioned whatever you believe, your unconscious beliefs are become true because you filter information, you allow information through the filter that proves them true, and you filter out information that proves them false. So when if whatever you believe is true, this is all that you can see, all that you can perceive. You truly, if you're living in a place of financial scarcity or you're thinking that the world is a scary and unsafe place, all you can see around you is scarcity and unsafe people or unsafe behaviors or unsafe things happening. And it's not that those are the only things that are happening. It's that that is all you can see. That is all that's being allowed through your brain's filter. I didn't explain the image earlier a couple slides ago, but there was a picture of a Jeep when we were talking about the brain's filter. And I put that on there because when I got a Jeep, all of a sudden, well, when I was started looking at buying a Jeep, all I could see on the road was Jeeps everywhere. Here's the thing. It's not that suddenly there were more Jeeps on the road. It's that I started to notice them because the information was relevant. My belief was a Jeep was a good car to own, and I proved that belief true by filtering through, allowing through the filter all of the Jeeps I could see on the road. So other people made that decision. It must be a good decision. So that's what I mean. All you can see is what you believe. Those Jeeps were always there, but I wasn't able to see them. And so if what you believe is true, you can work on installing new beliefs. You could use and create a new mantra, something like everything is always working out for me. And when you repeat a mantra again and again, maybe you have some sticky notes around that you can look at. What you're doing is you're programming that belief into your mind. However, when you're repeating this mantra, this is on a conscious level. This is your awareness, your attention, your thoughts. But the catch 22 is that your nervous system and beliefs operate in the subconscious mind. So that doesn't, what you're doing on a conscious level doesn't drip all the way down into your subconscious, where your beliefs, your nervous system, and your emotions live. And so you kind of have these two conflicting systems. It's kind of like a store that appears obviously open on the inside, but has a closed sign that is locked, and the door's locked. That's what it means when you have this, like, on a conscious level, you're like, I want the store to be open. But if your nervous system and your beliefs and your fears are still operating on the fear or the old system, they're going to keep that door locked and the closed sign forward. So that's all people can see. And no matter how much they consciously want in the store or you consciously want them in the store, the door is locked because your nervous system, your beliefs, and your emotions are operating below the level where mantras can work. So, in order to truly, truly change your brain's filter, you need to shift a couple things. You need to create a new way of orienting to the world by shifting deeply rooted belief systems so that your conscious mind and your subconscious can be in alignment. Because honestly, most of us live out of alignment. We want abundance, but we're practiced in living paycheck to paycheck, or we're afraid of being broke. So when we're have these two different kind of conflicting systems, conflicting beliefs in our body, it's as if we have a fishing pole that's been broken in half, and we're trying to cast our reel out with this broken system. We're not going to be able to cast very far. What we need to do is shift the beliefs and the emotions to be in alignment with the conscious thoughts and desires. And when you snap this fishing pole into place, you no longer have the conflict. You're in alignment between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. That's when you can throw out your reel and reel in whatever is that you desire. So we manifest in alignment, but most of us, because of fear and anxiety, are living out of alignment. So honestly, you really need to calm your nervous system to be able to help you manifest your wildest dreams. So let's talk about how you can calm your nervous system. And there's things that you can add or remove to your life that support you in calming your nervous system. So, what can you add to your life that would calm you down? We're going to give you some very easy to access, quick techniques right now. So, really, calming your nervous system is getting out of your head. Anxiety lives in your head, and calm and ease live in your body. So, do whatever it takes for you to get back in your body. Some quick and easy ways to do that is rubbing your fingers together and really focusing on what it feels like to feel the ridges of your fingerprint and thumbprint. Like noticing from the side of your finger, what does it feel like to rub your thumb? And then thinking from your thumb side, what does it feel like to rub your finger? By doing this, and I've even put up a fun little reaction. And so hold on, let me turn that off. Just rubbing your fingers together gets you into your body because you're focused on your body. You can crunch your toes in your shoes. In fact, when you do things that focus your energy, attention, and awareness on your feet, you are automatically grounding because you're getting out of your head bubble and really focusing your attention on your feet, which is the bottom of your body. And your feet are how you stay grounded and connected with the earth. You can actually go do grounding outside. Sometimes it's called earthing, but it is literally getting your body, your bare body, in connection with a tree or the ground or the grass or the dirt, whatever that is. Bare feet, or hug a tree, or sit and lay down. Anytime I'm spiraling out and feeling anxiety, I will go lay in my front yard really quick. Because what happens when we're overthinking or having anxiety is we start to break down. Each thought uses a little bit of serotonin and other neurotransmitters. But anyways, we're breaking down. We're thinking so much that we're burning through our serotonin really fast. That results in an excess of positive ions. And our body is meant to be negatively charged. The earth is also negatively charged. And so what grounding does is when you have this excess of positive ions, you're literally positively charged. It's kind of backwards because being positively charged is a not great experience for us as humans. And so when we go and touch our bare skin or socks, shoes don't work because rubber is an insulator. But you touch your bare skin to the earth is much bigger than you are and it's negatively charged. So it literally pulls those positive ions right out of your body and allows you to be regulated. And it'll also feed you some negative electron or negative ions or electrons so that you can restabilize your electrical balance. So grounding is really, really powerful, and it literally works in like 30 seconds or less. It's really powerful, works really quick. You can touch something soft like a blanket or pet a pet, or an animal, anything that's really soft. It literally starts if you rub it for at least 20 seconds, you get oxytocin, and that is a positive emotion, feeling neurotransmitter that you feel good in your body, and so that kind of counteracts the anxiety. And if you're touching a pet, they get oxytocin too. You can do the butterfly hug and tap, which is actually what is pictured in this picture. It's very simple. You literally take your arms, you cross them across your body so that you're like approximately your wrists are crossed over your heart-ish. Doesn't have to be perfect. And you just slowly tap one side, the other side, one side, the other side, one side, the other side, and notice immediately there's when you cross your hands, your brain is you can starts wiring or it starts operating differently. And so this is something you can utilize, and you just tap just ever so slightly. You can tap on your upper chest, like by your collarbone. You can tap on your shoulder. You can tap anywhere on your upper arm. It doesn't really matter, whatever you can comfortably reach. And it doesn't work if you do this. You have to go slow and calculated. And notice my energy level. I dropped into my body when I started doing this. My voice instantly changed. That was not on purpose. And I'm just more calm in my demeanor. So another thing you can do is called the havening. So there's lots of different ways that you can do the havening, but the most classic version is actually in that same position where your wrists are crossed kind of above your heart and you pet yourself. You can either do circular motions, you can go up, you could go down, it doesn't matter. All it's doing is getting you back into your body. And honestly, the havening this way and the butterfly hug and tap, it's like giving yourself this hug. I literally feel safer in my body. Not only is my attention, my mental attention focused on the feeling of being pet, but I'm literally calming my nervous system by giving myself a little hug. So this is one way you can do the havening. There's other ways you can do the havening. So I'm going to show you some images. And all the havening means is petting yourself. It is self-soothing. So honestly, I mean, I'm not certified in the havening, but in my experience, you don't need to pet yourself in a certain place or a certain way. It is just about petting yourself. And so that's the arm havening we did in the middle. On the right-hand side is palm havening. And so it's literally you can rub in a circle, you can rub back and forth. You're just rubbing your palms and your fingers together. And what's really interesting is the very first time, I'm a professional speaker now, and I have been for 7 years. But one of the very first times I spoke to a very large audience, I didn't know what to do with my hands. And I found myself, I watched a recording because I wanted to get better as a speaker. So I watched the recording and I noticed unconsciously, before I even knew what the havening was, when I wasn't pointing to something or doing something, while I was talking, I started rubbing my hands together like this, lower down on my body. I have them up high to show them to you. But I just started rubbing my hands together. So you might automatically do this or intuitively be petting and calming yourself. And again, there's no wrong way to pet yourself. It's whatever feels comfortable for you. I will notice oftentimes if I'm feeling stressed in a Zoom meeting, I will take my hands and rub the outside of my thighs, like literally from my hips down my IT band to the outside of my knees. I will just calmly rub my thighs. And so there's no wrong way to do it. We can talk about the face havening as a great way to do it too. This image is talking about like taking your cheekbones and lightly petting them outwards. Another technique I learned is taking loose little fingers and just like slowly dragging them, touching your whole face, feeling your eyebrow ridge, soft touch on your eye, your nose, your lips, and just dragging your fingers lightly along your face. You probably don't want to be doing that in a meeting or in public. You might look a little weird, but if you're in your home by yourself or with people that it's safe, you are welcome to do that face self-havening anytime. And it just helps you drop into your body and feel a little bit better. So those are things that you can add that calm your nervous system. Now let's talk about things that you might want to remove to calm your nervous system. So, news in the morning or at night is really detrimental to your mental health. Watching the news or getting information within the first hour of waking up or the last hour before you go to bed starts your brain spinning. And remember, news is a spoon fed, fearful narrative. And so it is only telling you bad things often, and you are the reason it's first hour and the last hour of your day is because you're highly suggestible during those times. So you really want to avoid social media, the news, any checking your email, checking your text, because that's all other people's agendas, all other people's ideas or narratives. And whatever you, especially in the morning, whatever you consume mentally and put in your mind and pay attention to in the first hour of your day, you are programming that deeply into your brain because you're in this subconscious, like more sedative, more suggestive state. And so the first hour of the day and the last hour of the day, you never want to watch the news. You want to avoid social media because that is when you're the most sensitive to have your nervous system and emotions wrecked by other people's fearful things or comments. Scary movies, podcasts, and stories. And again, these are things you don't have to remove them forever, but while you're working on creating more abundance and while you're working on mastering how to calm your nervous system, you might want to remove these at least temporarily. So I had a friend who had really significant anxiety. And I had known for a long time that she had anxiety. And one day she mentioned that one of her favorite things to listen to were serial killer mystery podcasts. And I looked at her and I was like, don't you think that those impact your anxiety? And she was like, no, no, no. I've had anxiety my whole life. The serial killer podcasts don't make it worse. And so, but I knew she really wanted to work at reducing her anxiety. So I gave her a challenge and said, if you want to improve your anxiety, would you consider cutting out all scary movies, scary stories, scary podcasts, no serial killer podcasts, just for 30 days and seeing if your anxiety does go down? And she was so certain. No, 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 no. I had anxiety first. Like it's not caused by the podcast. And she reluctantly, because I'm a neuroscientist, I kind of worked on explaining to her. I was like, this actually affects you more than you think. Would you like to take this challenge, this opportunity to reduce your anxiety? And because I have access to these sorts of things, I just gave her a test. Like I have tests around that's like just basically how are you feeling? How are you doing? What's your anxiety like? What are your emotions like? And it's a self-rated numerical test. And I gave it to her when she was still watching like the podcasts. And then I gave her the same test to take 30 days later after she had not been watching. And lo and behold, according to her data and her numbers, and also her subjective experience, her anxiety had gone down a lot. And she was really surprised because she was like, well, I have always had anxiety. And listening to serial killer podcasts is a new thing that I've only enjoyed in the last year or two. And so, what I explained to her is because of previous trauma or whatever happened to her in her life, her nervous system was in fight or flight. So, she was attracted mentally to the serial killer podcast because they were putting her system into fight or flight. And that's where she was comfortable. Because remember, we talked about your nervous system keeps you stuck, and we're going to keep going into that even deeper, stuck exactly where you are, repeating the past or the present again and again. So your preferences and desires will actually seek out things that keep you stuck. Like the serial killer podcast fed her anxiety. And so when her life was getting better and she didn't have things to be so anxious around, she had to find something new to add into her life to be in anxiety. So I recommend, if you're working with calming your nervous system, to cut out the news or scary podcasts or whatever it is, at least temporarily, and see if it helps you feel better and have less anxiety and sleep better at night. And the reason why, and I said this, but news and media entertainment is all subliminal messaging. Like, so we were told in the 1950s they used a subliminal messaging, just in case you don't know what it is. In the 1950s, they'd be watching a movie and they would splice in pictures of popcorn or drinks or nachos or whatever that they had at the food stand, gosh darn it, concessions. They would flash pictures and your brain couldn't see the images. They would be so quick. They would come and go before your brain could recognize it. But your brain would suddenly say, "Huh, I'm hungry for popcorn. Let's go to the concession stand." So that's what subliminal messaging is. And they literally did this on purpose to drive up concession sales in the 1950s and maybe even the 60s in movie theaters. And then they decided that subliminal messaging for driving up popcorn sales isn't allowed. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So I had always thought that subliminal messaging died 60 years ago or something like that. But it's not true. Subliminal messaging is the underlying messaging and the themes of all of the media that we watch. For example, I've stopped watching Bob's Burgers, an adorable adult cartoon about the sweet little family and the adventures that they go on. But do you know why I had to watch it? Or stop watching it. The underlying message is that money is hard, things are scarce. We barely struggle to survive financially, but we do it together as a family. That's the theme of every episode. So that's the subliminal message underlying is money is hard, money is scarcity, everything is a struggle, and each new day is a brand new challenge, and we're barely going to survive it. But we get through it together. And so there is, just take a minute to think about your favorite TV shows, movies, whatever, media, music, podcasts. What is the theme behind them? Like, what's the underlying message? So that's one way subliminal messaging is still programmed in our minds, is through kind of hidden themes that you really have to think about. What is this actually trying to tell me? The other way subliminal messaging comes through is the ads. Anytime you try and read an article on your phone, there's ads on both sides, there's pop-up ads in between. I'm not consciously focusing on the ads, but my brain is still getting some of that information. So when you watch ads, or sorry, when you read an article that has ads all over here, you might subconsciously, and you don't even realize the connection, but you might start wanting the things that are on ads, which is why it's really important to never sleep with the television on, because whatever those commercials are for is programmed into your mind while you sleep. So be really, really careful about the media that you consume. So things you can remove to calm your nervous system involve shows that are racing against a clock. Shows like Chopped and Nailed It used to be my favorite, where they have 30 minutes to do an impossible task. And what they say again and again, the contestants racing against the clock, is, "I would have done better if I had more time." And I didn't realize, I used to watch these kitchen shows all the time. And I was in a place in my life where I never had enough time. And I was running from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And I started noticing that really time scarcity was a big deal. I was never fully present. I was always thinking about, how am I going to juggle all these things? And it wasn't until, and I used to say all the time, I would have done better if I had more time. And it wasn't until I said that earlier in the day, and then we went to go watch the TV show, and a contestant said that exact same thing. Again, that show was subliminal messaging because every contestant said all of the time, I would have done better if I had more time. So watching these shows like Chopped and Nailed It and all of that was reinforcing my time scarcity and making me feel like I needed to run through life. And so consider removing anything that makes you feel anxious, nervous, or on edge. And these could be people, meetings, situations. Again, you don't have to remove them forever, but while you're consciously working on calming your nervous system, you might change your relationship with these things. For example, you can find out how to relate to them better. There's one specific person in my life that I love them and their family. And when I talk to them, they tend to make me feel anxious. So I have found out that the best time for me to talk to them is on my way to the chiropractor. Because then, if I get keyed up, the chiropractor calms my nervous system right down. And so I only call that family member on my way to the chiropractor each week because then the chiropractor can calm me down. So in that way, I've removed the negative impact and anxiety that that person sometimes gives me by making sure I communicate to them in a way that works for me. And if I'm having a rough day, I don't call that family member because I know that it's just going to hijack my nervous system. So remove anything or shift your relationship to things that make you anxious, nervous, or on edge. And in that way, you can calm your nervous system. So when you're we'll talk about calming your nervous system. Again, I've said this, but you're conditioned to stay safe. Safe means stuck. It means exactly where you are right now, absolutely no changes. And this is because your subconscious mind knows that you've survived up until now. So even if what you've survived is toxic shame or abuse, that is coded as safe in your nervous system because you survived. So when we are focused on staying safe, we're actually creating a world where we are self-sabotaging. And your preferences align with who you have been, not where you're going or what you want. We talked about this with my friend who has anxiety, was listening to those serial killer murder podcasts. Her preferences aligned to who she had been, which is anxious, not where she wanted to be or where she was going, which is a place with less anxiety. And she was so practiced being anxious that it actually felt more comfortable, more familiar in her system to have anxiety than to not have anxiety. So we tend to make the same choices again and again, and unconsciously, we don't even realize that we're making those choices. And we get in these cycles of self-sabotage. So, how and why we self-sabotage is because when we're keyed up, the things and we what we're craving is rest and ease. What we do is often things that keep us feeling like we are already, but give us this false sense of comfort. So when our nervous system, when we're in fight or flight, it's really easy for us to reach for alcohol or sugar or binge watching TV because those things put us in a dopamine loop. We feel good while we're doing them. And you know the difference between just a dopamine loop and a positive feeling because in a dopamine loop, you need more to feel better. So, like when you're watching Netflix, you need to watch that next episode to feel better. When you're drinking, you need another drink to feel better. As soon as you stop doing the activity, you don't feel as good anymore. That's how you know you're in a dopamine loop. And binge watching, in fact, there's a difference between self-care and checking out, but most of us don't know the difference. I hear all the time from people that they're like, I had a hard day, so what I like to do is grab a glass of wine and watch my favorite TV show. Well, those are two different ways that you check out, but neither of those are self-care. And because self-care is fulfilling and gives us a long-lasting positive feeling, and checking out is putting us in a dopamine loop. So when I take a bath and I'm relaxing. And that's real self-care, real sustained positive feelings. I don't get out of the bath and say, oh, you know what I need? I need to take another bath. I feel fulfilled. I feel calm and grounded and peaceful, or whatever that is. I feel complete after the activity, and I feel good for potentially hours after that activity. That's real self care. And most of what we do thinking it's self care is checking out, binge watching a favorite TV show. So, how you can tell is if you have a long lasting feeling of satisfaction and ease for at least 30 minutes to an hour after the activity, and you don't ever have the urge to do it again, then you know you've done a real self care activity. If you're like, oh, but I want more, I want another cookie, I want another drink, I want another episode, then you know you're in a dopamine loop and you're actually checking out. And a general rule of thumb, with the exception of I do listen to like meditations and stuff on my phone, a general rule of thumb is if it involves technology, it's most likely checking out versus self-care. But like when I listen to a grounding meditation, I get out of that meditation. I don't go for the next meditation. That's how I can tell it's self-care. So, this dopamine loop gives us a false sense of comfort. We feel good in the moment, but within minutes of stopping that activity, we no longer feel good. And so we stay in these self-sabotaging patterns, reaching for the things that keep our nervous system and our emotions stuck exactly where they are right now. And honestly, these things make the problem worse. So checking out how it makes the problem worse is you had a long, hard day, but you're not actually filling your cup. You're checking out. You're not refilling your cup with self-care. So you're not like, basically you have, instead of refilling your cup in the evening after a long, hard day, your cup is empty when you're going to bed because you never refilled it. And then tomorrow your cup is still empty. And so it really truly makes the problem worse. And oftentimes it takes an outside perspective to help you assess what activities and habits you're doing that are self-sabotage. What are the things that you're doing that are hijacking your nervous system and reinforcing the choices of who you were versus how you want to be and where you're going. And so that's why I love my job is I can help people see their habits and behaviors that are keeping them stuck, their blind spots and their choices that they're making that they don't even realize are choices, and how to help them release resistance by making new choices. So that's what I love to do using neuroscience. So we talked about the nervous system's component when it comes to we talked about the nervous system component when it comes to manifesting. Now let's talk about the emotional component, because your emotional vibration is what you are manifesting from. And we're going to explain what that means. So you manifest from your emotional energy. Each emotion you have has an energy that is transmitted out. It's measured in, it's a frequency, it's measured in hertz. Every emotion, every thought, each belief has a frequency. But the biggest driver, the loudest signal that other people receive from you, and then the universe, God, universe, source, whatever you believe, we say Gus in our house. So Gus is, and other people are reading the loudest frequency is your emotional frequency. How are you feeling? What emotions are you experiencing? And so whatever you manifest is a response to the emotions that you're feeling. And your emotions are driven by your thoughts and beliefs. If you're in a place where the world is scary, the economy is uncertain, I don't know what to do, those thoughts are going to drive feelings of anxiety. And your beliefs and your fears and all of that just kind of get all wrapped up, and it's transmitting a frequency of fear out to the world around you. And so when we're in a place where the world is so uncertain, unprecedented uncertainty, like we are in this moment, our grief, our fear, our anger, and our uncertainty literally bring down our emotional energy. And I'll give you an image to understand what that means in a moment. And to manifest what we really want, we need to have high emotional energy. So, what is that saying? When we are in a place of guilt, shame, apathy, grief, fear, desire, by the way, desire is greed. It's not like, ooh, I want that. It's like jealousy or, so it drives feelings of like insatiableness. and anger. These are all lower level emotions. And there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion because each emotion has its own place in the world. Like if you just lost somebody, having an emotion of grief is a very valid emotion. And notice that each emotion on this left hand side is the frequency measured in hertz. And each emotion has its own frequency. By the way, this map or this map of consciousness, I call it the color chart of emotion, but the map of consciousness was created by Dr. David Hawkins, and he writes about it in a book, Power versus Force. This is where I borrowed this image from. But when we're in the place of anxiety and fear around what's going to happen around me or outside of me, what's going to happen to my family, we're here. But honestly, if you want to manifest, you have to be over a level of 500. It's a little bit easier on the left-hand image, but at the frequency of 500 is when you start dissolving negative feelings, negative energy. And so what we need to do, we manifest from places of love and joy and peace and enlightenment. But oftentimes, our day to day, we're living in fear, anger, and anxiety. So, what we need to do is we need to shift our emotions to come up this chart. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, we're going to give you some tools, but gratitude is at a frequency of 900, which means it is one of the highest levels of enlightenment, one of the highest emotions we can measure is gratitude. You know what's really interesting is that you know what the frequency of abundance is? 888. So it's only 12 hertz less than enlightenment. So anytime you're wanting to shift out of shame, grief, apathy, fear, anger, whatever that is, one of the ways you can do that is by focusing on gratitude. Because for the few minutes that you focus on gratitude, you're really truly bringing up your energetic state, your emotional energy into that 900 range for a few minutes. And the more you consistently practice gratitude, the longer you'll stay in it after you're done. So if you just practice gratitude one time, you'll feel gratitude for maybe 5 minutes after you're done, and then you might fall back down to grief, anger, fear, whatever. But if you practice that gratitude for 5 minutes every day, suddenly you start staying in it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour after you finish the activity. And if you practice it long enough, you actually if you don't keep falling back all the way down to where you started, you might fall down to pride or courage or neutrality or willingness. You literally raise your emotional vibration every single time you practice gratitude intentionally. And it's not just about thinking about gratitude, it's about feeling it in your body. How does gratitude feel in your body? So, how do you raise your emotions? And I just wanted to say emotions are like a volcano. These paper mache volcanoes, either we've experienced this as a kid or you've seen or heard of it, where they've paper mache volcanoes and you put in baking soda and you put in baking soda, put it in, put it in, put it in, put it in. And then it just takes one thing, a catalyst or a trigger. That is the vinegar in the volcano situation, but it's a trigger in our emotions and psh, then the volcano explodes everywhere. This is what happens with our emotions. These built up emotions create pressure. So when we're triggered, they explode and burn down us and everyone we love. And so, in order to raise our emotional frequency to manifest more of what we want, we need to drain out the negative emotions and replace them with positive emotions. And you replace them with the emotions you want to be thinking and feeling to manifest when you manifest your dreams. So we'll talk about how to do that now. There's emotional routine maintenance. This is really focused on ways that you can release the built up emotions. So things like, and really honestly, the short answer is anytime you're intentionally practiced in giving your emotions time and space, that means you're doing emotional maintenance. So some people like to be in nature and they just literally focus on how beautiful nature is because if you give yourself the time and space, your emotions will actually naturally process out of your body when you regularly, whether it's daily or weekly, give yourself time and space to feel them. So one of the ways you can do this is called a date with doubt. And so another coach taught me this a long time. She was certified by Mary Morrissey. I think that's the original person who did this tool, but I love to share it. And it came to me at a time where I was a new entrepreneur and I wasn't certain if my business was gonna make it. So I had a lot of self-doubt about whether or not I was ever going to be able to make enough money to replace my, corporate paycheck that I left. And so I had these feelings of self-doubt all the time. And this coach taught me to have a date with doubt. And so every Friday at 9:15, I would journal for 15 minutes to get all of my doubts out. And I literally just free journaled on loosely paper, just everything, every fear, every anxiety, all my anger, all my self-doubt, whatever it was, I just let everything out. So it doesn't have to be specific to an emotion. I just let out all of the negative emotions I didn't want to feel, all the skeletons in the closet that I was thinking consciously or unconsciously but didn't want to feel. I wrote them all on that piece of paper. And then I would burn the paper, and it was very cathartic for me. Be sure if you're burning things to do it safely. Please don't burn down a house or a yard or start a wildfire or anything. But I would burn them in my gas fireplace safely. And what happened is if you practice that every single week, you're telling I was telling my doubts and my negative emotions, I will give you time to process. And what was so magical, if you stay consistent and you actually do this process week after week, when I felt doubt on a Tuesday afternoon, I would say to that emotion and say, "Oh, I have an appointment with you on Friday at 9:15. I'll see you then." And I actually stopped feeling doubt except for during those times because I had proven to myself with consistency in doing this practice that I was giving myself time and space for those emotions to come out and be heard in an appropriate way. Another thing we can do is smash rooms. This is a really appropriate way to release anger or frustration. Journaling can be really powerful. Just getting everything negative out of your head and onto paper can be a really powerful way of releasing the pressure of negative emotions. Time in nature and EFT tapping is the most scientifically tested tool to help us release our emotions. So EFT, emotional freedom technique, is tapping on these Chinese meridians. It is ancient Chinese medicine mixed with modern day psychology because in Chinese medicine, each organ is associated with a specific emotion. So if you tap on a meridian for that emotion, you're actually awakening that organ and asking it to process the emotions that it's storing in it. And again, this is very scientifically tested and shown to work. They had veterans that had complex PTSD and were non-functional. They were like institutionalized in a mental psychiatric facility because they were unable to function in the everyday world. And then somebody came in for a research study and taught them tapping, and they did tapping for like 30 minutes every single day. And they actually were able to leave the psychiatric institution and integrate and go back to their families and start living a normal life because they released the negative emotions. So how do you do EFT? Honestly, if you're not familiar, go to YouTube and just search EFT tapping for anger or grief or whatever it is, anxiety, and follow along with a video. But I'm going to give you the instructions really quickly. EFT tapping, the steps is you identify the issue. What is the emotion that you're feeling you don't want to feel? You rate the intensity of the emotion right now on a scale of 1 to 10. My anxiety right now is a 4 in this moment or whatever. And then you determine the phrase to say, even though I have this anxiety, I love and accept myself anyways. You tap on the 9 major meridians. Even though I have anxiety, I love and accept myself anyways. Even though I'm having anxiety and I don't want to feel this way, I love and accept myself anyways. Even though I have anxiety, I love and accept myself anyways. And you just go through all of these points and you just keep repeating the phrase. Even though I have anger, you can mix up the emotions. It doesn't really matter. Even though I have this feeling, I don't know how to name it and I don't want to feel it anymore, I love and accept myself anyways. And then you can tap on these places and say, I want to feel love. I want to feel ease. I want to feel joyful. And so what you do is you tap on these until you feel better, and then you rate the intensity again on a scale of 1 to 10, and you just keep tapping until it goes from whatever number down to 0 or 1 or wherever you're comfortable with. Again, follow a video and tap along, but that is a quick explanation of how to do EFT. So releasing negative emotions is super important, but holding these new emotions, changing your emotional set point from anxiety to gratitude can be tough to hold because you have a set point right now of what the emotions you're used to feeling is your emotional set point. So if you chronically feel anxiety or anger, that is your normal emotional set point. So and again, I want to be crystal clear. This is not about toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is when you feel sad, but you put a smile on your face and you just fake that you're okay. That's not what we're talking about. I really want you to give yourself time and space to feel these negative emotions. So we're not talking about putting a smile on, but we're talking about focusing on gratitude when you are feeling anxiety and just really saying, well, I can be grateful that I have this adorable dog that loves me. I can pet her whenever I want, and she gives me so much love. No matter where, no matter what else is going on in my life, I can tune into the gratitude I have in these little areas that are easy. But when you're really wanting to change your emotional set point, it's not just practicing these new emotions. You actually have to be able to sit with the negative emotions and process them to find the lessons, the golden nugget. What is the wisdom that that situation is sharing with you? And changing your deeply rooted beliefs. So part of what was driving my not self theme, my very practice emotion is anxiety. And so part of what I had to change is the world. I had a belief from when I was a child that the world was out to get me. It was me against everyone else. And so that was a belief. So in order to upgrade my emotional frequency, I had to release the belief that everyone is out to get me and really install the new belief that everything is happening for me and there's a lesson or a gift. Like everything is, and it's not, life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And it's my opportunity to figure out why and how this can be for my good, no matter this negative situation. And truly, changing your emotional set point is finding a way to be grateful, even for not just the easy stuff, but the hard stuff too. Be grateful for that car accident that, totaled my car and caused all these problems and caused physical injury in my body. Being grateful for that car accident because I can see the lessons and the positive shifts it created in my life. For example, it caused me to slow down. It caused me to really be more attentive and aware on the road and things like that. But I am grateful to that car accident for many things. I've had many experiences in my life that were highly traumatic, child abuse and neglect that was very extreme. And I am deeply grateful for all of the neglect, the abuse, the almost going into foster care, all of that. I'm grateful for it because it made me independent. I am fiercely driven and motivated. I am self-reliant. I'm resilient. And all of these things that came from a really bad situation happened for me so I can be the person I am today. That is what we're talking about in changing your emotional set point. And it can be really challenging to be able to look at something like child abuse that you had no control over that really damaged your life. I lived in anger and anxiety for decades until I got the support of somebody else that helped me on this journey. So I love to support people in a similar journey of being able to be grateful for the negative things and see how everything that happened to you, every little thing that happened to you in your life happened for your greatest good. So, in summary, how we turn anxiety into abundance is upgrading our nervous system so we can manifest what we want. And that involves getting clear in what you want. It involves finding evidence of what you want already around you so you can reprogram your brain. It involves breaking through your unconscious resistance patterns, breaking through your self sabotaging behaviors, and developing the ability to transform uncomfortable emotions and taking aligned actions. Turning anxiety into abundance also is about building a new identity around who you're becoming and habits and stepping into that version of you and showing up every day as if you already have the results. Because they say in manifestation, you have to be it first to see it in your life. So how can you be, if you're practiced and feeling anxious and time scarcity and money scarcity and all of that, how can you be grateful for and feel grateful, feel abundant and feel ease before the results come in your life? You can feel those emotions in your body, and that helps build your identity of the version of you that you're becoming. And when you feel those emotions, because like attracts like, when you're feeling anxious, you attract more things that make you anxious. When you're feeling deeply grateful, you attract more things that make you feel grateful. So when you can stay in those upper level of emotional vibration, you attract more things that keep you in this state of love or whatever that is. So when you build this new identity, whatever you're manifesting becomes truly inevitable. So I would love to support you in becoming a manifesting machine for your wildest dreams. If you're tuning into this presentation, it might be because you are manifesting some of your nightmares right now. So I'd just love to support you in upgrading your nervous system, regulating your emotions, upgrading your belief system, whatever it is to support you to release anxiety and manifest more abundance in your life. So, I would love to offer you a 30-minute manifesting machine coaching session. This is where I can support you. I'll give you one tip that will be personalized to you to support you in becoming a manifesting machine for your dreams. And I'll also share with you how I could support you in becoming a manifesting machine, how I can help you calm your nervous system, release these negative emotions, and step into the version of you that you're becoming. I have very limited spots available on my calendar, and this offer expires on April 24th. That sounds like a long time away, but I'm traveling for 2 weeks between now and then. So there's very limited spots on my calendar. So you can either scan the QR code or you can go to https://ubuu.as.me/30mindcspeak. That is my speaking link for you can book this manifesting machine call. So I appreciate you so very much. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you learned something that will help you support your nervous system to be calm and to release these emotions. And may you manifest your wildest dreams in 2026 and beyond.